Welcome. This is a spoken commentary on Genesis chapter 35, an exegetical and biblical theological reading of the text within the unified promise plan of God. Genesis 35 functions as a vital geographical and theological transition in the patriarchal narrative. It records Jacob's journey from Shechem back to Hebron and marks the conclusion of his long wanderings away from the Promised Land. After the severe crisis at Shechem, where the violent actions of Simeon and Levi left the family vulnerable, God intervenes and commands relocation to Bethel. Within the overarching architecture of the divine promise plan, this chapter serves as a structural reset. Before Jacob can safely re-enter the sacred space of Bethel, his household must undergo rigorous spiritual purification, casting away foreign idols and severing lingering ties to the Aramean past. This prepares the way for a grand covenant renewal in which God restates the ancestral promises originally given to Abraham and Isaac, ensuring the historical continuity of the promised seed line despite human failure. Section 1. The Call to Bethel and Spiritual Purification, Genesis 35 verses 1 through 4. God initiates the movement. He instructs Jacob to arise, go up to Bethel, dwell there, and construct an altar to the God who appeared to him when he fled from Esau. In immediate response to the violence at Shechem and Jacob's deep fear, this divine directive provides rescue and a path back to the original locus of covenantal encounter. Recognizing his role as bearer of the Messianic promise, Jacob commands a comprehensive family cleansing. Put away the foreign gods, purify yourselves, and change your garments. The foreign gods include the household idols Rachel had stolen from Laban, along with any other pagan objects accumulated in Mesopotamia. Changing garments involved bathing, washing clothes, and shaving, signaling both inner and outer transformation into pilgrims fit for true worship. Jacob then buries the idols and earrings beneath an oak near Shechem. This act marks a clean final break from idolatry and prevents any future retrieval of the pagan items. Section 2. Divine Protection and the Bethel Theophany, Genesis 35 verses 5 through 15. As the family journeys, a supernatural terror from God falls upon the surrounding cities. This intervention prevents the Canaanite and Hivite neighbors from pursuing Jacob's sons for reprisal. Upon arriving at Bethel, Jacob builds the commanded altar and names the place El Bethel, commemorating the site of his original ladder vision. God appears again and confirms Jacob's transformation by restating the name change from Jacob to Israel. Operating under the divine name El Shaddai, God restates the core covenant elements: fruitfulness, multiplication, nations, an assembly of nations, and kings proceeding from his body. This theophany parallels the unconditional promises given to Abraham and keeps the inheritance of the land firmly tied to the chosen seed line. Jacob sets up a permanent stone pillar, pours out a drink offering and oil upon it, and formalizes his exclusive allegiance and thank offerings to Yahweh. Section 3. Death's Transitions and Human Fracture, Genesis 35 verses 16 through 29. The narrative now records a series of transitions and deaths that sever the present generation from its Aramean past. Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, dies and is buried under an oak below Bethel, named the Oak of Weeping. As they journey toward Ephrath, Rachel experiences severe labor while giving birth to Jacob's 12th son. Before dying, she names the infant Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow. Jacob, however, renames him Benjamin, son of my right hand, shifting the child's destiny. Rachel is buried near the road to Ephrath, Bethlehem, and Jacob sets a marker over her grave. Following this grief, human depravity fractures the household. Reuben, the firstborn, commits immorality by sleeping with Bilhah, his father's concubine. The act functions as a pagan-like grasp at tribal power and headship, and it evokes Israel's silent but lasting grief. The chapter closes with the death of the patriarch Isaac. He is buried by both of his sons, Jacob and Esau. The brothers peaceably reunite at Hebron to lay their father to rest in the ancestral burial cave, a temporary cordial resolution before the narrative shifts fully to the seed line. New Testament appropriations. Later, biblical writers organically draw upon the narrative cues, covenantal formulas, and typological frameworks of Genesis 35 to map the progressive realization of the promise plan. Matthew chapter 2, verses 16 through 18 leverages the tragic imagery of Rachel weeping near Bethlehem. The Gospel connects Rachel's historical sorrow and the later Babylonian exile to Herod's slaughter of the innocents, showing how the birth of the ultimate Redeemer brings hopeful reversal to ancient tears. Galatians chapter 3, verse 16 unpacks the collective and singular dimensions of the seed promise reiterated to Jacob at Bethel. Paul argues that the promises of blessing to the nations find their structural center and absolute fulfillment in one specific royal descendant, Jesus the Messiah. Romans chapter 11, verses 25 through 29 relies on the irrevocable nature of the patriarchal blessings. The unique call of Israel as a distinct people remains uncompromised. Gentile believers are grafted into the nourishing root of Abraham's family without replacing or annulling the concrete historical promises given to ethnic Israel. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 11 through 22 sees the expansion of Jacob into a nation and a community of nations as anticipating the eschatological reality of the church. Non-Jewish believers are brought near into the commonwealth of Israel, forming a unified living temple where Jew and Gentile share unmediated access to the divine presence. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 45 through 49 finds in the rhythm of historical deaths and the birth of Benjamin out of sorrow a parallel to the ultimate victory over mortality. The physical bodies of the patriarchs left in Canaanite soil serve as historical down payments for the resurrection when the last enemy, death, is defeated by the last Adam. Theological synthesis. From the standpoint of the promise plan, Genesis 35 testifies to divine fidelity operating within a deeply fractured space-time reality. The chapter is not an accidental patchwork of traditions, but a deliberate, organic consolidation of the covenant lineage. Burying the household teraphim and purifying garments underscores a non-negotiable biblical principle. Entering sacred space and abiding in the presence of a holy God demands total transformation of character that reflects His holiness. The juxtaposition of divine blessings alongside multiple family deaths demonstrates that while the effects of the primeval curse continue to plague human history, they cannot derail the Creator's overarching campaign. The covenantal trajectory initiated in Eden and focused through Abraham and Isaac is meticulously preserved through Jacob, now firmly established as Israel. Every physical pillar erected, every bone carried to a specific burial plot, and every boundary crossed serves as a verifiable historical earnest. They point forward to a future reality in which the scattered nations are brought back into a single family, human failures are definitively answered by the perfect obedience of the Messiah, and heaven and earth are fused forever in the fully restored cosmic temple,